What's the funniest way you have ducked up a date? I offered to pay for the bill. She insisted to pay half. Didn't fight it, but only had a large bill, so I pocketed her money and put my bill in. Anyway, long story short, I did the math wrong and stole $20 from her. She sarcastically said thank you, and I thought she was being sincere. That's the funniest thing I read all day. Thank you. Now, was that a sarcastic or a sincere thank you? Question mark? Question mark? We order a small snack for our coffee, and as it's arriving at the table he pulls out his Nokia phone. Trying to make a light-hearted joke, I say, man, that has got to be the oldest phone I've seen in a while. I really dug it in. Trying to break that friendly wall. Well, turns out it's not a Nokia. It was his insulin pump. You should have doubled down. Man, that has got to be the oldest insulin pump I've seen in a while. Apostrophe. And also the newest. It is the only insulin pump I have ever seen. Apostrophe. When I was about 20 or so, I got a date with a girl who I really liked. She was exactly my type and couldn't believe my luck. We met in a local pub for a few drinks and things were great. I was getting all the good signs with lots of hand touching and the like. An hour of pure bliss went by and I needed a piss. After washing my hands, I went to the hand dryer and it didn't work and looked like part of the protective grill was hanging from it. I wanted to dry my hands because I wanted more of the hand-holdy stuff. In the single most stupidly brain fart moment of my life, I thought I can fix this and put my hand inside the nozzle of the dryer. Why? Question mark? Why the fuck? Question mark? Obviously I got buzzed by the electric heating element. Fell back and cracked my head on the wall. I didn't get knocked out, but needed a few minutes to sort my shit out before going back. I didn't have the balls to tell her what had happened. Brain fart number 2. I had a banging headache and I wasn't quite right. Not much later she made her excuses and left and turned me down when I asked her for a second date. A year or so later I found out she had told her friend that she really liked me, but I went to the toilet and when I came out I was acting really weird and she wasn't up for dating someone on drugs. Hand dryers, not even once. Apostrophe. Paper towels. Now that's where you get shit done. We were sitting on my couch watching a movie and she moves closer and closer until she is on my lap. As a joke I start to tickle her and then she starts to tickle me back and then it turns into play wrestling. Right before things switch from play wrestling to making out, we both slip off of the couch and my reflexes kick in. So I accidentally move in a way that puts her below me. She slams her head into the hardwood floor. She laughs it off, but it killed the mood and we went back to watching the movie. That's one way to slam a girl. Come on and slam. This was in high school. She invited me to her house to have dinner with her family, and I didn't know them very well yet. The conversation turned to names we thought were old-fashioned and ugly sounding. We all threw out a few like Gertrude, Bertha, and Eugene. And then I said something like, at least that one's not as bad as Deborah. I used my ugly voice and everything. Her mom's name is Deborah. Her grandmother was also at the table with us. We've been married for almost 7 years. Do they still give you shit for it? My wife's family would still be giving me shit for it. Just like a Deborah, to not let shit go. I went on a date with a girl I met in an online chat room to see King Kong at the cinema. I was in my young teens and the ending absolutely shattered me. Even though I knew it was coming. I cried. Not a lot, but a couple tears. She noticed and asked incredulously if I was crying. I just nodded, and without saying anything further she got up and left. Never returned any of my messages after that. Should have told her that you used to have a gorilla. We all used to have a gorilla. My first night in Buenos Aires. I'm in a nightclub buying a drink. I hand the bartender local note equivalent in value to about $20. He's saying something in Spanish I don't understand. But I'm thinking one drink can't cost more than $20, so what's his problem? This incredibly smartly dressed, beautiful woman intervenes. She explains the barman is asking if I have a smaller note because he doesn't have change. No problem. We get to talking. I tell her it's my first night in the city. She says, oh, you must let me show you around town tomorrow. She puts her business card on the bar and pushes it towards me. It has her name, her number, and the fact that she's an English language teacher. So in what I think is an incredibly witty, flirtatious comeback, I push the card back towards her and say, "Oh, I don't know. My English is already pretty good." She scoops the card back, says fine, and walks away. I remember thinking, oh well, at least no one saw that. Then I turned around and my friend is right behind me shaking his like what a loser. When I told that story to some Argentinians I met later in that trip, they said not to worry. The woman had probably been a con artist or prostitute targeting foreign tourists. I'm pretty average looking and she was definitely way out of my league. Close bracket. You lucked out. Argentinian here. You definitely lucked out. I didn't know it was a date and brought my very new girlfriend to the movies with us. Yeah, that was one ducked up date. Unless, you know, it actually did turn out okay. After a long time I ended up with the girl I originally was supposed to have the date with. We've been together for 4 years. Basically I messed it up by having my dad drive us home. We had gotten to her doorstep and I had walked her there and I'd go in for that goodnight kiss and I land it and my dad shouts, "Let's fucking go dude, it's 10 PM. I got in the car and didn't talk to my dad for a while after that. I was pretty mad. Oh man. My dad drove a group of us home from formal junior year of HS. Me, about 4 friends, and I'm the only one with a date. We drop off the guy first and my friends are egging me to walk him to his door. Da fuck. So I do, and the next thing I know he has his tongue down my throat and my friend is singing Kiss the Girl from the Little Mermaid out of her car window and my dad has his head on the steering wheel. Then he walked me back to the car. So awkward. Edit, at least I'm reaping that sweet karma for my first kiss story. Oh, you're a girl. That was confusing for a little while. Lol. I sneezed just as we were about to kiss. Edit. Thank you for my first gold. When I was 22, I went to the grad party for an 18-year-old friend of mine. Met her as the little sister of one of my best friends. Subsequently became friends in her own right. I'm hanging out with a bunch of teenagers and kinda hating it when one girl goes in for a kiss with her boyfriend. In that obnoxious we are teenagers and we are so completely in love way that breaks up before even a semester of college is over. However, she's allergic to dogs and our mutual friend has 2 in the house. The girl sneezes directly into her boyfriend's mouth. That was 5 years ago and the memory still makes me smile. In high school I once saw my friend's friend making out with her boyfriend right as the bell for class rang. The guy left promptly as it was a large campus and she was left there with her tongue sticking straight out of her mouth for maybe 1 or 2 seconds. It was hilarious and she was so embarrassed. Years later that girl is my coworker and she's actually an extension of the devil himself, so when I have to deal with her shitty attitude I just think about that moment 10 years ago. I have volatile allergies. My nose may have started bleeding during a New Year's kiss with a beautiful girl I met that night. It may have gotten in her mouth by the time we noticed. And I guess she maybe ran to the bathroom and threw up. Please don't look at me. Can't say I relate with bleeding into a girl's mouth. But volatile allergies are nasty stuff. Nothing like wiping your nose and seeing the blood and being like shit. Not again. I was 16 and on a movie date. Went to do that move where you stretch your arms then put it back down around her shoulder. Instead I just elbowed her in the face. I think most girls enjoy it more when you're obvious about it and just do it instead of pretending you're stretching. Cause no one falls for that shit. Yeah, 16-year-old me didn't know any better. Now that I'm a bit older and wiser I know that the movies is not a good place to have a first date anyway. 2 hours in darkness and silence is not a good way to get to know someone better. Brought a girl out for sushi and unknowingly ordered baby octopus. Turns out octopus are her favorite living thing. You ate for 2. It's rude to ask a man if he's pregnant. I drove a Volvo from the 60s. The fuel line and filter would get clogged occasionally. On a first date, I pick her up. As we are heading to dinner, the car dies. I pop the hood, knock out the crud in the filter, and then have to suck on the fuel line to get it flowing again. I wasn't fast enough and end up with gasoline in my mouth and on my shirt. She was understanding. But needless to say she wasn't impressed with the Tekran mouthwash/cologne. IDK man. I'm a dude and my panties would be on the floor after seeing that. Granted I do enjoy fixing cars. A gentleman never goes gas to mouth. My auntie, yes. My auntie set up a date for me. I'm half Asian and half European. So when I visited my family in Asia they wanted me to date and probably marry this chick because she comes from a rich family. So we met at a restaurant and she brought her brother. He brought his girlfriend. I went there with a cousin. He thought it was hilarious. We introduce each other, but it's loud and they mumble, so I don't understand their names. I decide not to ask them all for their names. Didn't want to be rude. So I talk to this chick, and she is educated and good looking as well. I start to think, hey, that wasn't a bad idea. I actually like her, and we seem to be on the same wavelength. I start to flirt with her, and she seems to like it. Then suddenly the brother says something, and they just leave without saying anything. I'm totally confused. Turns out I was flirting with the brother's girlfriend the whole time and I never even looked at the girl I was supposed to date, except when we introduced each other. Yikes. I didn't duck up the date. The date was just ducked. Met a girl at the local McDonald's after school one day when I was 15. We talked and then exchanged numbers. She asked if I'd go out with her the next day. I thought she was gorgeous. And when she said I should dress up I expected something special. She took me to her grandma's funeral. Who in their right mind sees a funeral as a good date idea? Mark Corrigan. Got hit by a car walking to her apartment. I bounced off the windshield and was thrown across the intersection. Probably because I was in shock. And in retrospect the driver was drunk. We didn't call the police. Instead, I limped to the girl's apartment. When she answered the door, she was dressed to the nines and ready for a big night. But I had to tell her I couldn't go out because I'd just been hit by a car and probably should go to the hospital. She looked at me like, now I've heard every excuse in the book. I never dated her again and now I'm pretty sure she's a lesbian. What the hell? That worked in Back to the Future. That's heavy. Technically wasn't a date because we just went out as friends, but it functioned as one. It was a girl I worked with. I'd been interested in her for a while, but we were just friends and that was fine. Still, we hung out a lot and eventually one night we got drinks after work and things escalated. I'll spare you those details. Fast forward to later that night. We are both asleep at her place. Now, I hadn't been sleeping well all that week partially because of her dragging me out with her. And when I'm sleep deprived, I have very strange dreams, and I'm prone to sleepwalking/talking. In my dream I'm walking down this tunnel, like a metro tunnel. I see this girl on the ground crying. She's got no clothes. I ask her what's wrong, and she lunges at me. She was a zombie or something. She wraps her corpse arms around me, and I throw her off and start yelling. That's what I was seeing. I was fighting for my life. What had actually happened outside of the dream was she tried to cuddle with me, and I responded by freaking out and literally throwing her out of the bed. She screamed and that partially woke me up, but I'm still mostly in the dream. She asks me what's wrong and I just start yelling things. Who are you? Where's your clothes? Get away from me. I woke up fully as she was storming out of the room. She thought I was trying to be a prick. I suppose. If I had a gun at that moment, I would have shot myself. No joke. I felt awful. I thought I blew it. Once I went out and explained what happened she thought it was hilarious and came back. She still gives me shit for it, though. This would have been a perfect romantic comedy until you ruined it by explaining yourself immediately after the trademark misunderstanding. You're right. Should have left and come back with a boombox. I flirted with a cute bank teller for weeks before working up the nerve to ask her out. Didn't realize she was super religious. Invited her to a Mexican restaurant and ordered 2 margaritas. When she told me she doesn't drink I said that's okay. These are UHH. These are both for me. Apostrophe. She told me I wasn't Christian enough for her and I agreed. And there I sat, drinking 2 margaritas alone. You had Mexican food and 2 margaritas and didn't have to listen to her preach to you. Sounds like you came out on top. You would have preferred to come on top. This girl's father had just recently passed away, so I invited her over to make her dinner and console her. We make dinner and we are talking about stand-up comedians, and she tells me she's never seen Louis the 100th. K. So I say we need to watch one of his stand-ups. Well, I turn on one randomly, and the first 25 minutes are dead dad/parent jokes. I feel like you should probably have switched to something else after the first minute or two of dead dad/parent jokes. Seconded. This one's on you, man. My friend took a girl to McDonald's, classy, and ordered food for himself. Didn't even ask her if she was hungry. Then she was just watching him eat. There was that story which was told many times. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.